Let me try to talk slow, a little slower, so let's speed up.
Hey, this is Tyler Sonata. This is for the Psychology 142 final project. Today we're going to be going over personality, and I'll be interviewing my buddy here to see. First, we'll go over the definition of what some of these key terms are, and then we'll ask him about what he knows about it, and then also some experiences he may have had with it. So, first off, this is Tony.
Hello.
Say hi, Tony.
What's up?
Hello. Alright, so we're going to start this off. First, we're going to go over ego. Ego in the book is defined as the part of the personality that provides a buffer between the id and the outside world. So what do you, Tony, know about the ego or understand it to be?
So the ego is basically your conscious function. So everything you're doing, everything you're thinking, a lot of these things are the result of your ego. So your primal id and your conscious superego are always battling, butting heads. And so there has to be something in the middle that are balancing. It's a balancing out between these two. So what's balancing that is the ego. So the ego is the portion that makes your everyday decisions. Id wants to be primal, superego wants to be just and right. Ego takes a balance between the two, and that's how you make your conscious decisions. So.
Gotcha. Do you have any experiences you may think of
you
with that?
Well, you experience it in your everyday life with your ego, as you're doing one thing that maybe thinking something morally acceptable, maybe doing anything that's not morally acceptable, whatever it may be, you're using it to balance those two. So it's always in use, always in use. When you make your decisions, always in use. A big part of your personality.
Okay, so ego, I know a lot of people use it in different ways or think of it in different ways, which can be very interesting. Now, what about superego? The book defines superego according to Freud. I never know how to pronounce that guy's name. The final personality structure to develop. It represents the rights and wrongs of society as handed down by a person's parents, teachers, and other important figures. So, in your own words, or from what you know, how could you explain superego?
So your superego is it's more conscious than your id, but it's also up there. It's basically telling you what is right, what is wrong. So it's your moral compass, per se. So whenever you, from experience, from, like I said in the book, what your teachers are teaching you, what society says, that's all lodged up there in the superego. So whenever this goes back to the ego portion and the id. The id, which is the, reverse, the opposite of your superego, that's making the more primal decisions. Your superego is saying, listen, don't listen to him, listen to me, do the right thing, do what society is telling you is the right thing to do what your mom said, whatever values you grew up with, it's telling you to do those moral things.
So basically, as something that's been you've been taught or brought up to know,
right,
as something that you didn't just naturally learn.
It can be naturally learned, but it's more or less more so society and your parents and your teachers and things like that. So if you have an experience, say if you grew up in the jungles, right, you don't have any form of contact with society, you might find some type of animal, of course, you want as your pet, that you want to protect, that's yours. And your superego may be formed that's saying, protect this thing at no cost, even though it's not even benefiting you. It's saying this is the right thing to do, protect this animal for whatever reasons. Your emotions.
Gotcha.
Issues. So, yeah.
Okay. And then, so like you said, opposite of the superego would be the id. And then, let's see, how does the book describe that one or define it? It says the id is the raw, unorganized, inborn part of personality whose sole purpose is to reduce tension created by primitive drives related to hunger, sex, aggression, and irrational impulses. So, again, you mentioned it was primal.
Right.
So how else would you describe that?
It is a subconscious function. So you don't know, you're not conscious of this function, the id. The id is your primal instinct saying, a lot of these things may not even make sense what you do, but the id wants it. It's primal. It wants to have sex. It wants to maybe partake in drugs. It wants to eat. It wants to, it's very, if you had to do an iceberg, for instance, if it's an iceberg, you'd have the ego sitting above the water, and maybe some of the super ego sitting above the water. But down below the iceberg, what you don't see, is the id. The id is not conscious. So a lot of these primal drives that you're doing, it's a result of the id. And the super ego is saying, no, don't listen to him. Listen to me. Be right. Be moral. Have integrity. It's saying no. Basically, you know, do what I want to do. Do what is natural to me. Instinctual. Instinctual would be a good way to sum it up.
Instinctual, okay.
Right, and then the balancing act between that would be the ego. So this all plays back into each other. Ego is balancing these two guys, making sure that none of them are going overboard. And that's, ego is mostly what people see of who you are.
Gotcha. Okay. Cool. So, and again, this all has to do with personality. How would you say any of these would have, like, you know, positive or negative effects on personality, or that's just how it's completely made up?
That's just how it's made up as defined by Sigmund Freud. There's other things, like there's socionics in Russia that go into even more detail with the id, superego, and ego. They even have a super ego or super id block, which is a little different. But for this, we'll just go over those. It's just the natural way they say your personality is made up of, categorizing it.
Gotcha.
So this also plays into something else, the Myers-Briggs personality, which is something that is derived from Sigmund Freud's theory, Jung's theories, Isabel Myers.
Okay. What else do you know about the Myers-Briggs? I know it's similar to you know, Jung's Jung's
Carl Jung.
Yeah, his theories. What do you know about?
So basically, Myers-Briggs is how they categorize personality types. Alright, so you have 8 different letters, and I mean different things. So E, extroverted, I, introverted. Extroverted means you get energy from speaking to people. Introverted means you get energy from being alone. The second letter, which is intuitive and sensory. Sensory means you get facts and things, details in your present environment. Intuition comes from something that is subconscious, something that is not directly in your environment you get information from. The third letter is thinking and feeling. It's how you make your decisions. Thinking means you're going to take the most rational thinking decision. Feeling means you're going to take the one that's the emotional right, the ethical right thing to do. And the final letter, J and P. J is judging, P is perceiving. P means that you are, you know, not making out. You're not structured, not necessarily structured. You are taking information of your environment and it's making even quicker decisions, spontaneous. Whereas judging is making a little more long-term structural changes. So all these different letters, they make up different personality types, and you have 16 personality types. So in the in society, in the industrial world and the corporate world, they use this to gauge, you know, what a person is more, you know, naturally aware of, good at, and what a person's weaknesses may be. So that's how the Myers-Briggs comes into play into that. And the ego and the superego and the id all come into play because, you know, these certain functions may be part of the id, whereas like some of these thinking, feeling functions are part of the ego and some are part of the superego. So
gotcha.
That's it in a nutshell.
This is basically a lot of different things that go into
someone's personality. So
exactly.
You may look at a person as just another person on the street, but the thing is, if you're into psychoanalysis and you know what it means, then you can take that one person and analyze their personality to a T, and that's every single person out there. So
gotcha.
It's a whole other world out in every single person.
That's very, very interesting. Well, thank you, Tony, for spending your time, taking the time to understand and talk about some of these concepts with us. And again, thanks for helping with my project. Big help here. Smart guy. So those are some of the topics of personality and just a quick little overview of how some of those things work. I hope this was able to sum up personality for someone who may not understand. And thanks for listening.